Have you ever caught yourself feeling like Paquito is a weak hero, or there's something you're doing wrong? Well, that's kind of both the case. Paquito is a hero with weak skill effects, meaning he can only target small numbers of enemies and will require precise skill aim, which makes him a very hard hero to master. But with the right build, over time you'll manage to master your own playstyle depending on these 3 builds. Here are the top 3 Paquito builds. Let's begin. I will be basing the rankings of these builds based on my perspective. Therefore, your own top 3 may be different. Top 1. Now this is my most unique build. With this build, I reduce the early game damage in exchange for a very fast moving Paquito with low cooldowns and high late game damage. Another unique thing about this build is the use of Endless Battle. After casting a skill, your basic attack will be enhanced for extra true damage. The reason why I included this build is because we can really benefit from it since the build encourages often skill usage. Here are some clips of the build in action. This build is focused on movement speed, cooldown reduction, and damage. Though the damage will only be noticeable in the mid to late game, since we're going to be relying on the build and don't have the Assassin Emblem as the source of our early game damage. Now, I really don't recommend the build if you don't have the muscle memory to use skills quickly while maintaining the precision, because the build is mostly reliant on fast skill usage. I created this build because Paquito can barely keep up in teamfights, which of course, Paquito isn't really a teamfight hero, but that's the purpose of this build, to make him a hero more than capable of going into teamfights. Using Temporal Rain along with 40% CDR will really give you the edge when it comes to outmaneuvering enemies. In my opinion, exchanging the early game damage is really worth it if you can use the skills quickly. Top 2. This build is focused on damage with 30% CDR. Just like the top 1, this build also offers the finishing blow ability, but a lot better. After casting a skill, your basic attack will be enhanced by Endless Battle and Blade of Heptasis. That's another 1500 damage after a skill combo. Talk about overkill. Another unique thing about this build is the use of Warcry. After activating Warcry, all of your damage will be increased by 8% for 6 seconds. Add that up to Master Assassin and you'll get 15% extra damage. Now, this build is a nightmare for lone heroes. Here are some clips of the build in action. I mostly use this build if there are troublesome heroes that's needed to be dealt with quickly, like high DPS heroes like Mia, Layla, Claude, and so on. With this build, you can one-shot squishy heroes as early as level 4, with just only Assassin Emblem with Penetration and Master Assassin. One downside of this build is that you will not be able to help your teammates much during teamfights, because you won't have mobility and your skills will have longer cooldown. Top 3. This build is the most balanced between damage, speed, HP, and spell vamp. With this build, you can last longer if not indefinitely in the battlefield without going back home to base. This build won't have as much damage as the other previous builds, but if your playstyle is focused on team participation and fighter-like style, then this build is perfect for you. Here are some clips with the build in action. This build is the most fun to use, because you will mostly be in the battlefield because of the high sustain and HP. With this build, you can hold your own even against 3 or 4 enemies. Just don't expect to kill them because that's not likely to happen with this build. Using this build if your team has no tanky heroes will increase your chances of winning compared to using the top 1 and top 2 build. Remember, there is no weaker or stronger amongst these 3 builds, because they have their own uniqueness and they are to be used on different scenarios. Comment your experience about the builds in the comment section below. And that's it, I'll see you in the next video, Shizu out.